Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, I have recently highlighted many of the actual devices produced by MAGA-RAE. And he is a noted researcher. I'm not sure we could call him Radionics purely. A very interesting guy. He was born in 1913. He died in 1979. Another one of those people who lived to their middle 60s. This seems to be common with people born in the late 1800s, 1880, to the early 1900s, where there seems to be a lot of people that died in their 60s. Now, this is kind of an aberration because most people throughout history, by the way, going back even thousands of years, live to be their 80s. Well, most people, including today, are living to be in their middle 80s. Now, this is basically average life expectancy at this time. Now, the world life expectancy right now, based on everything from disease to accidents, is around 78 to 80 years old. So if you don't make it to that, you haven't made the gross average. Most people who have decent medical care and live in the Western realities or Eastern realities like Japan or China, who have certain better diets and better medical care to a degree, even if it's traditional, are living well into their late 80s. Now, a lot of people are even living into their early 90s now, as the average, which went from around 86 to 90, is going to 90 to 93. So that's important to understand. I don't know if people really understand that either. Another misconception, we're living longer. We're not living longer per se. We never really were dying very young, except from a lot of toxins and stuff. So there's this anomaly. Now, the reason I bring that up is that most radionic practitioners and a lot of alternative practicing people who do alternative healing, whether they're massage therapists, herbalists, etc., take on the energy of the customers is the only thing I can think of, and they tend to die younger. This is a classic example, particularly with female psychics who are sensitives. They're not sensing. They bring the energy into them, then sense the pain of the person, and then direct that, get the information from there. Really bad technique. So you need everyone who uses that, particularly women, should stop. You sense, you release, and you back off. You don't take into you. So this is one of the problems with radionic practitioners in general. Basically, only Hieronymus, Galen Hieronymus, lived long. I believe almost to 90. So other than that, all the rest of them have been dying fairly young. Now, Ray is an interesting person here. He was more into homeopathy and to homeopathics, which have been proven to be effective. I was into them for a while, moved away from them, didn't feel like I was getting any results from them. He claimed to have healed kidney stones and gallbladder problems by using homeopathics. During World War II, he was in the Navy, and he rose to the rank of commander, showing that he could make good decisions and was generally intelligent. I'm not sure anything connected with the military is something good for you. It makes you respond and conditions you. Of course, World War II, he was fighting for the survival of his country. So this is quite different. But people that go into the military today is not a recommendation that they have any skill. If anything, it's the opposite. The military doesn't allow you to think properly. So this is another thing we have to come to grips here, particularly with the remote viewing clientele, are all basically brainwashed government agents. So moving into Ray again. Now, Ray was into this and used all these homeopathics. And of course, radionics and homeopathics are dealing with similar energies. You're dealing with informational energetic fields. You're dealing with vibrational energies. And this is what you're moving. Now, anytime you move into anything physical, you are moving away from the potency of what these tools and devices are all about. Now, what a radionic machine does is get you a sigil or a signature or an equivalent in numbers, for a particular informational energetic field. That's how it works. And of course, you need a measuring device to do this. You also need a device that can broadcast this energy. So that's basically what the radionic machine is. So when you start putting things on a machine that are non-vibrational in nature, I do it myself and a lot of other people, they'll put stones and crystals on there. Well, these are not vibrational in nature. At least you haven't made them that way. So you can make crystal or stone vibrational essences you can use, but you can't use the energy from a solid mass. This means it's not vibrational enough. You have to break it down. This is what they do with homeopathics. You'll get something that is whatever, that has a certain energy to it, but we understand that the physical is difficult to assimilate into your stronger, higher energy bodies to get changes. So what they do is they break it down strictly to the vibration, the informational energetic field that is then put into you, which your body then is able to take in and use at a very high level. This is the whole idea of going from energy to the physical. Now, regular scientists go from the physical first. Everything has to come from something physical, no matter how small it is, which is what quantum means. Quantum means the smallest measurement you can possibly have. Subatomic particles, all these things are, but they're still saying there's something there. They're not admitting that there is, basically it's an energetic field. Because they want to start from a physical, meaning there's something there. That's a very ignorant way of looking at things. But very typical of science, and why we have kind of stopped in science and are now at a terrible dead end, which probably will not change for another 100 years. But so after eliminating these kidney stones, you got, and of course, getting out of the ridiculous military, he was then started to get into his own idea of what he was interpreting, and a lot of what he was getting into had to do with dowsing. Dowsing's a big part of this, using pendulums, etc. Now, this takes a skill. There's a large percentage of the population that cannot dowse well, and a large part that cannot dowse at all. So this is a real problem, that you can't pick up these energies. There's other people that tend to over-dowse. I went to a particular woman who was supposed to be a medical dowser, and her pendulum used to spin like a helicopter. That's not how pendulums work. So she would over-exaggerate everything she did I don't know if she's trying to do that for the customer or not, but that's not how dowsing works. So you're picking up energies, and maybe you get it fast one time, maybe you get it slow the next time, maybe the movement of a pendulum should be dictated by the level of energetic that's going on there. So pendulums and everything else are a big part of radionics, and dowsing are very close in terms of using it to define the radionic numbers. Now, people use what are called stick plates. Now, stick plates are grabbing a particular, as you slide your finger, usually over a rubber or plastic type plate that has a coil underneath it, and you're trying to sense the energies. Now, this is a problem unto itself of the fact of is what does that do there. Now, that's how you get a stick, and since you have to use rubber or plastic, you're technically using an insulator, and that insulator is a problem when you get down to it, because you're stopping a certain amount of bioelectric energies. I mean, your electric cords and electrical flow wires are what? They're all coated with plastic, because plastic's an insulator. So I'm not sure that's the right way to go when you're trying to do these things. But if you want to stick, people tend to do that. Well, you don't really need to do that. There are other ways to do it as well, but that seems to get it by. But it's faulty thinking that we have to be careful of here. So what did he got? He got involved in magneto-geometry. Magneto-geometry is what he got into, which was basically he drew circles representing the Earth, and then he would hold the pendulum over those circles with a particular witness, and he would get from the physical witness, let's say a homeopathy preparation, and then the pendulum would move in a particular direction. Many directions or just a few. So if it moved off to the, and this is not a spin now, this is a swing. And spins, which I like, which are clockwise and counterclockwise, he wasn't doing. The circle represented that. He was representing, and the circles here were supposed to represent the magnetic energy of the Earth. And then he would get movements from his pendulums, and that whatever direction it went to, he would mark that off on there by putting it. So you'd have to see his circles, and you'd have to see what happens. But he would then get a mark which would run through those circles as a line. So, as I said, it's hard to describe in an audio here. So the whole idea is that then he made up these cards. He made over 2,500 of these cards, which is why he's still popular today, because basically it's what you would call a rate book. And he equated this to the actual magnetic energy, or the Earth's magnetic field. Now, the problem with the Earth's magnetic field is that it's very changeable. It's very different. Now, a lot of people confused, even myself for many years, that this was the Schumann resonance. Well, it isn't. The Schumann resonance has nothing to do with Earth energies. And Earth energies change all the time, depending on where you're at, how strong they are, and where they are. We all have heard of magnetic north, and we use compasses for that. So you're picking that up, so you can use a little compass, and it will direct you towards magnetic north. And of course, he was using these types of energies to make his famous ray cards with these circles and marks on them. And he made it up for every homeopathic preparation there was. He made it up for emotions, for stones. You name it, he made up one of this, otherwise known as making up a rate. But they were more symbolic in nature, based on the energies flowing from the Earth. Now, I don't know if that makes sense or not, that you're getting a rate that's based on the magnetic field of the Earth, and that this is supposed to make changes. I don't know. It's hard to say here. So originally, he wasn't really putting anything in these boxes. What happened after his experiments, which you would insert a card, you would then insert a witness for the person, you would dial, and you could send many to it. You could dial the potency in. And we have many of these machines that are shown on our website now, if you want to look at them. It's quite interesting, and they're kind of confusing. I've taken his units apart, and it doesn't seem to be really much in them. Matter of fact, some have nothing in them. I'm not sure if I didn't see even magnets. So it's kind of very confusing, and his original units were pretty primitive in terms of, well, you're just moving energy to one or the other, and there may be some magnet involved. And I guess when you're talking about extremely subtle energies that we're talking about here, homeopathic, etc., excuse me, that this could possibly work. But we have to be very careful. We're dealing with very subtle energies to begin with, and if they're not strong enough, what happens? So, and how much does intent of the operator affect all this? So these are all the problems anytime you deal with subtle energies, because there's an interaction there. Now, the subtler the energies are, the better, because these can be moved. This is the controversy of when you're tuning things in. So the Schumann resonance is not Earth-based in terms of the magnetic field of the physical Earth. The Schumann resonance is the 8 hertz, 7.8, 8 hertz is close enough. If you want to get into tenths of a fraction, I'm not sure that matters at all, is the magnetic field of the atmosphere, so to speak. Not the physical planet, but this is what the physical planet produces. And this seems to be the magic number. All major empowered people go into 8 hertz before doing any psychic work, healing work, remote viewing, etc. Now, this has been proven through years and years of research. So it's pretty much a substantiated fact, and done by very qualified people. So we need to understand that. So but it's not the Earth. But he went through this through the Earth's field, and he found out that trying to tap into that through machines alone was very difficult. So he started to use a small magnets, and then he changed these magnets, and I think he's got fairly strong magnets or other things in his later units. Now, he has a fair amount of information, but unfortunately, he did not write about his work. He didn't leave anything other than his machines and his, of course, his cards. And these cards, a lot of them were made in the 1970s, 1975 is what I find most of them. If you find cards, that's what you'll see at the bottom of them. You'll see 1975 on the card. And this is one reason why we have so many of his machines and everything else. These are pretty much recent. So you're talking about, what are we talking about, 50 years ago, etc. So he lived almost until 1980. So we're talking about 40 years or so, give or take, 40, 50 years. So the point is, that's not that long ago for this type of equipment to disappear. So there's a fair amount of his stuff. The cards are all out there. I think there is some corporation, magneto-geometric corporation out there today, or someone who's making similar instruments out there and sells all of his cards. The problem is the radionic instruments are very, very diverse, and there's many different types, and this is where things get very complicated, and there's so many ways of doing things. The question is that what is the guts to make things work? What do you do about it? Well, you have to figure out how to amplify these energies. If you don't, you're basically using just symbols that generate a certain amount of energy. Now, these do work. And if you use the proper symbols, you can get results. Symbols have been shown to be extremely powerful. Now, symbols, and to show you how powerful they actually can be, is demonstrated in the book that everyone should read, Mind Machines You Can Build by Harry Stein, which he just takes a simple spiral, a clockwise spiral, and a counterclockwise spiral, and shows you how powerful they are. Now, you take these individually, you hold them up against your chest, let's say a clockwise spiral. Well, this tends to empower you. So you put your arm in, with your left hand, you hold the spiral against your chest, and with your right hand, you hold it out from your side, pointing out. And someone can then lightly press down on it, and you find out that, hey, you're strong. You take a counterclockwise spiral, and you hold that to your chest, and you do that with your arm. And you can't hold it up, period. Even the slightest amount of energy weakens your body. Pretty frightening, isn't that? And mind-boggling that this has not been looked at and examined to the power it is. So it just shows you by making a spiral on a piece of paper with any type of pen, pencil, etc., can totally weaken and disempower you as well as strengthen you. So to think that sigils don't have power is disproven by that simple and very proven scientific test, which can be done anywhere, anytime, with anyone. And it pretty much works 100% of the time. Why? So it just shows you the power of just an image. So this is what you're adding to when you make something like RAE cards. So you're putting those energies in there. Of course, dowsing in general. You can send energy when you're dowsing to someone. So this kind of all mixes together. Why does it mix together? Because you're using informational energetic fields. You're sensing whatever field is there, and that field, because of the nature of it, can be transmitted to a person, place, or thing. So you can also represent that. We do that with sigils. We use numerous images and energies to put into sigils that then transferred to you. For more general things like health, wealth, protection, etc. Ray didn't do that. Mostly what he did was for actual healing situations and for homeopathics. And of course, homeopathics is another thing that's legal in England, and of course, even the United States, where homeopathy is legal as well. And homeopathy is just taking any substance, whether it's toxic or not, and breaking it down into its pure energy. Homeopathics also deals with the fact of getting the body to react. So if you get a poison in you, your body's going to fight that and create certain countermeasures. Well, you can do this on an energetic level, so it'll fight some sort of illness. So you could actually poison somebody, and that will cause a certain reaction. And if it's a tiny bit of poison, you'll get the reaction without being too sick and it killing you. I mean, that's the background to homeopathy in terms of giving you something that is counter. So, and it's a complicated subject. I'm not going to go into all the details of this now. It's not going to interest most people. We're going to lose you. These will be gone into in great detail in a lot of my other lectures to come. So basically, he found a way of using magnets, his cards together in these devices, and he would pick a homeopathic preparation for a particular problem. He would put it in the machine and send it to the person, and that's how it would work. And there's variants of this and everything else, and that's kind of like radionics. What he already made the rate for you, which was the card, and instead of having numbers on it, was more symbolic. So in terms of having this, and he believed that connecting to magnetism was something that assisted the process. Now, magnetism is interesting, and it certainly has its effects, especially strong magnets that are directly connected to you, put on your body. I've used them for years for knee problems and other things, and have gotten a certain amount of results from them. They seem to be very limited. Once your body takes in a certain level of magnetism, that's it. It doesn't seem to help past that. We've tried to use these with radionic machines in general, and magnetism hasn't really shown to be much of a booster, even though I'm in favor of it in small amounts. Magnetism, electricity, all these things are part of what assists these kind of energies to be delivered into your energetic informational fields of your physical bio unit, meaning yourself. So, So these types of machines is what he built. He has a whole bunch of information that goes into the details of things. He apparently had, and he was practicing radionics, apparently he had a fairly good but undocumented rate of success. And this is the problem. If we don't know or document these things, particularly in countries where they're not as hostile to you, and particularly at that time, I mean, after all, he is a radionic practitioner, he should have at least wrote his cases down, particularly so when he died or whoever he left it to, that these things could be published. This happens all the time, that things are published after someone dies because there's nothing that can be done to them. They also can't defend themselves. They're not here, so they can't verify it. So the credibility of written documents is not strong with the public. So these things are allowed generally to get out. Publish all the stuff you want when someone's gone. Nobody cares that much. And the longer the time is, nobody cares. Just like the videotapes proving Uri Geller's abilities that were filmed at SRI. They have been released somewhat. I mean, they're not all over the place, but they're there. They've finally been declassified, and nobody cares. That's 30 years ago. It's gone. Who cares? That's old news. So with all that understanding, this is what we run into. But he didn't do any of that, and there doesn't seem to be much of a... nobody in this field has sat down there and mapped out their success rate. Abrams didn't do it. Nobody in the radionic field did it. Drown didn't do it. I mean, we just don't know what is the facts here, and it's very, very, through the entire frustrating reality for researchers that we don't have this, and if there was anything, I'm sure it would have been destroyed as well. It's just like all of the millions and millions of books and writings that have been destroyed, particularly from the Aztecs and the Mayans. From what I understand, that entire civilization, only 3 books survived from the entire Mayan empire. Aztec and Mayan Empire. Really sad. And people, well, they didn't write, of course they wrote books and they had carvings. They were all burned and destroyed. And the only thing we have is these 3 little books and, of course, all the carvings on stone, very similar to what happened in Egypt, even though some scrolls have turned up, etc., and we have some information. But a lot of that has never been actually written, translated. As we have millions of books that have never been translated. Some stuff that is still sitting there from the Middle Ages on the Crusades that have never been translated. They're sitting there for hundreds of years. It costs a lot of money to translate these. You've got to get skilled people. They're not going to work for minimum wage. You need to devote your entire life to it. This is tough stuff. So we need to understand that. But here we go into modern times with the same type of suppression. What works? What doesn't? Now, we're hoping finally and once and for all to get to the bottom of this. We're also getting past a lot of these old technologies using earth-based understandings, cards, etc. Well, we always like to take stuff like this and combine it into new practices, new instrumentation. Now, the fact is that there's a lot of the old instruments out there and people that are making new ones that have no basis whatsoever. And it's very, very primitive stuff. Some's a little better than others. And what does this achieve? We don't know. The people involved in all this stuff are so scared that they produce absolutely nothing. It's amazing they can sell all this stuff based on, quote, reputation, which is now 60, 70 years old. So we have a whole bunch of people selling all sorts of equipment, and there's what can it do? We don't know. And there isn't even the illusion from a lot of manufacturers of what they can do. They talk about things to a very slight degree, and it's all wink, 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 this all works. Well, I think that time is gone. But there, we have to understand that there are major political problems, and these things are not easily solved. Most people that do alternative stuff, that get into alternative healing, are destroyed. It's as simple as that. Their entire life is ruined. Does anybody want to do that? Well, certainly most of the new people don't want to do that. People prominent in this field who are legitimate, and there is a few of them, are very scared to do anything and don't really make any kind of statements of what they're doing and how their work is going. It's really sad, and this is a political issue that needs to be stopped. I don't understand the problems with England, where there are many registered practitioners who will work with you, but there is absolutely no data. And I don't expect this to be screamed on the front page, but it doesn't seem like anybody is in any way verifying this information and giving some sort of statistical data of what percentage of success they're getting, how does this work, how does it. So it is a problem. So I'm not sure how this will ever be overcome, but nobody's really doing anything about it. It's sad, as he said, that in England, where it's semi-legal, that no one is really doing anything there. So, but this is the way of the world, and it's unfortunate. Pretty much everything in life is a big fraud that doesn't work, and so we shouldn't really be overly surprised that this is kept as well. So do you really think your doctor has good success? And why don't they report their success? How many people have they worked with that died? What is their death rate? What is their other things? So all of these things you'll never hear about because of the reality of what's going on there. And this is really sad and evil. So as we move through these understandings in life, we have to understand this is the mystery. Who's going to break this open? Well, I'm hoping that I can do some research, talk to people, and report the facts myself without identifying the practitioners. So if we don't identify the practitioners, well, they shouldn't be a problem. And of course, they can always state that they didn't do anything and that I made it up. So I'm hoping that we can get to the end of this. But getting back to MAGA-RAE, as he said, he has this card system with over 2,500 cards, mostly homeopathic, but there are all sorts of things. He has things for emotional states, problems, stones, etc., that are all rates that you can put cards in and potentially charge something. So let's say you had a rate for a diamond. You could put diamond energy into a homeopathic preparation or water. Maybe diamonds will affect something, and that vibrational subtle energy will help you with something. So, I mean, you can have a card or get a rate for just about everything. Now, what does that do? Well, the point is that we don't know. Is there a particular use for it? There are a lot of metaphysical understandings for stones. And of course, all of this is very subjective of how well they work and what the level of transmission of energies are. And in the long run, it's great if it works for you. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't have any value. So it's just as simple as that. So, but there's no clearinghouse, there's no nothing. Everybody is selling stuff. Testimonials, while are nice, really don't have any value because there's no third party looking into them. Secondly, in what context were those testimonials? What have they done? How do they work, etc.? So all of that stuff is a serious situation that needs to be looked into if we're going to break through this entire area. there certainly is a lot going on, and we just don't know if any of these claims are any good. We do understand that this technology works, but to what extent? And that's the big question, as it always is. But getting back to Malcolm-RAE, is that he had this system based on this Earth's magnetic system, and that's what his whole thing was about. And he did not leave any writings. He didn't write any books, except apparently contributed to one book called The Dimensions in Radionics with Tansley and others. So this is one of those unfortunate things. Can reverse engineering his units assist us? Well, we're going to do all that, and we're going to go into the study of this. What is in these things? Everybody's saying how wonderful they are and how great they work. And what does that mean? Of how wonderful they are and how great they work. We don't know. The fact that people were involved in this for many years, they made their living off of it, they sold these machines, which seem to be quite a few. He must have made a lot of machines, Malcolm-RAE, because they seem to be around. Maybe not. Maybe they just pop up. But what are we to make of all this? Well, it's very difficult to make of all this anything. There's absolutely nothing out there that can in any way prove this, because of the illegality of it, being the fact that it's the healing industry and the lack of paid researchers. And this comes down to the same thing. I mean, the bottom line is that people really can't do anything. They really can't complete studies. They're too busy making a living to get rich, as the old saying goes. So they don't have the money for the research. So we don't know. Is someone making instruments and living off of the money they make from instruments a person to get valid information from? Well, of course not. So you assume someone's doing something because of the fact that there's some validity to it. But what level of validity is there to it? And there may not be any validity. You invest your life in a period of time into doing something. Well, can you stop and say, hey, this is all bunk, and walk away? Well, this is unlikely. There are all sorts of problems that these things actually cause in your life. You need to survive. How do you do that? So you end up supporting something even if it's wrong, as so many scientists did. This is Einstein did towards the end of his life. He wanted to verify his life work, so he would not believe really what was the truth, and this goes on to so many others. So a lot of scientists who found out that their life's work was wrong, and they went to the grave supporting what was wrong, but they really knew it. So as we move into those understandings with that, and we'll give you greater feedback, we're going to show you the opening up of many of these different instruments for those that support us on All Access. And we'll look at these. What is this? What are the cards? Do they have energy? Can we test them? So all of these things are something that we have to look at in terms of what is going on, and nobody really has done that. It's amazing how many instruments are actually made out there and the amount of them. It is quite surprising what is going on there. So, and of course, all this wants to be hidden, and they want to make sure they suppress this information in general and any of its validity. We are in a horrible health crisis, and something has to happen. And these types of technologies really have to be looked at once and for all. But the people involved in it who do have a wee bit of power and have some money aren't really doing anything. Some are selling instruments, writing books, and doing other things, but what does that add up to? It really doesn't add up to much. They're really just running a business with very little empowerment behind it. So Malcolm-RAE is another one of those. The fact that he died young doesn't say much for his technology as well. This is always a catch-22 in my book. I'm always kind of upset at the fact that here are people that claim to be healers, and they tend to die young. So I don't expect people to live to be 100, but you should be getting up to close to 80 if you want to have credibility on physical realities. But here's a guy who couldn't make sure, and was doing all this stuff, that he lived to be 80 or so. He didn't make it. He didn't even make it to 70. This is pretty sad. So what are we going to do about all this, and what is the actual proof to all these things that we can give credence to this kind of technology. So here we go again with this big confusion of how this works. But for those who want the basic information, as I said, it's these cards that are based on the Earth's magnetic energies, which is something that personally I don't give too much credence to, at least based in magnetism and the Earth. Now, is he making a sigil? Are those marks imprinted with the energy of that? Has he created a symbolic image of whatever that card means for that has a energy in it that is valid? Well, yes, I agree with that, and I don't agree with the fact that there's some sort of magnetic Earth connection to this that empowers it, and why would there be? I'm not sure how that would help, unless you're saying, well, the magnetic field of the Earth is a great amplifier for these, and that's why they're using it. And I'm assuming that's what they're saying. The Earth's magnetic energy amplifies this energy that is then sent to whomever the person is that you are treating in that aspect. So hopefully this has been very informative. Until next